And welcome back to CTV News Channel. Thanks for joining us. I'm Todd Vanderheyden. There has been no shortage of news in the world of technology in 2017. From fake news on social media websites to top tech companies rocked by scandal, we're going to count down all of the top tech stories of the year with some help. The help of our finest techies here in the roster at CTV. We've got Carmi Levy in studio with me, and we've got Aaron Burry joining us from our studios in downtown Toronto. Carmi, let me start with you. Social media, fake news, it's such a big part of life nowadays to be on Twitter and Facebook. They come under real fire, though, over the past year or so because of this whole Russian hacking of the presidential election and on and on.
They really have. This really is the year of reckoning for social media. Up until this year, I think we didn't really take it fully seriously. It was still a place where we went to get away from things. We posted pictures of our breakfast and we poked each other and we just said funny things to each other, shared memes. In 2017, things got really real. And this is where we realized that because we're spending all of our time on social media, this is real. It is not an escape from the real world. This is where the real world comes in, and all of the negatives that we sort of deal with day to day, they're present and prevalent on these platforms. Moreover, we also saw ample evidence that these platforms are influencing what we see them, how we perceive them. And so, the Russian influence in the presidential election campaign, that obviously was a concern, but it went far beyond that. And I think, as the year closes out and we're seeing questions about advertising, who's being advertised to, how are they being advertised to, we're now seeing insiders from the industry. So the first president of Facebook, Sean Parker, we're seeing their former VP of user growth. We're seeing a former product manager wrote a book, Chaos Monkeys. They're questioning the very ideals of Facebook and social media in general. And as 2018 begins, I think we really do have to look at social media and ask ourselves, is it doing us any good or not?
Is it time, Aaron, do you think, to perhaps reassess our relationship with social media, big picture?
Well, Todd, I can't break up with social media because that's just ridiculous, as I'm sure you wouldn't either. But I think 2017, as Carmi said, is the year that we started to question what we see in our feed. And that statement that you can't believe everything you read kind of became more true than ever. I mean, Facebook had 150 million impressions served up from fake news articles propagated by Russian organizations to people in advance of the U.S. election. And they've taken a lot of steps to help mitigate that. Them, along with Twitter and Google, have partnered with kind of truth-finding organizations like Snopes to be able to spot fake news. And they're also equipping us as consumers with tools to help identify when we're seeing fake news. Things like related articles, so that we know if something actually has related articles in reputable sources, and giving us more details on the authors behind posts, and saying whether it's been fact-checked or not. So I think these things will help. But as I've said before, I think, the onus is on us as the consumer of the news to actually do our due diligence. And I think that we're just a little bit lazy as a population. And so we'll probably keep seeing fake news, keep believing it, and unfortunately keep sharing it on our Facebook wall in 2018.
Yeah, it's a great point. Rule number one of journalism, always consider the source, right? Before you sort of take part in anything, before you read anything, you got to consider where it's actually coming from. Okay, let's move on from social media under fire to some of these tech companies that came under fire over the course of the year. And that would include the folks at Uber, very popular ride-sharing service, of course. But they came into a lot of trouble, came under a lot of fire. There were complaints about sexual harassment, a so-called bro culture at Uber that went right to the very top. It led to the firing of 20 different people, the resignation of the company's chief executive, and now the new chief has got to repair Uber's reputation. And it wasn't just sexual harassment. There were other things, Uber behaving badly. Carmi, start this off here. Who's to blame for this?
Well, I think it all goes back to the original culture, the original founders. So Travis Kalanick, who was the CEO up until recently, but he still has influence in the company. He's still a member of the board. He still has influence over membership on the board. And of course, other members are trying to push him out. I think it goes back to the very initial founding of the company. It was based on bro culture. It was based on busting into new markets and creating a new paradigm, changing the way that we transport ourselves. And so you don't do that by being polite. You don't do that by asking permission. You do that by moving into a market and redefining the rules. And if there's collateral damage, then so be it. And that's been Uber's culture all along, and it hasn't changed. And even though the new CEO has come in with a much softer message, the truth of the matter is you don't undo years of legacy like that. And in fact, it doesn't happen overnight. And in this case, I suspect it probably won't happen at all because we're still continuing to see Uber step in it as the year draws to a close. And I suspect in 2018 that list of faux pas is going to grow even longer.
Right. Uber, of course, not alone. And Aaron, what's your read on this notion of bro culture, women in tech, and what Uber is perhaps symbolic of?
Well, Todd, this year was an incredible year for women's voices being heard. I mean, the Time Person of the Year was all of the people, the voices behind the Me Too movement. And Susan Fowler is a great example of that. She was the former Uber engineer who wrote a very damning post calling out repeated instances of sexual harassment at Uber during her tenure there that she brought to HR, that she brought to executives, and nothing was done about it. And her single post was what brought down the Uber executives. And we're seeing that across a lot of companies in Silicon Valley. And a lot of women asking for change. You know, a lot of the venture capitalist boardrooms are full of men. There was just a story last week about holiday parties in Silicon Valley and how companies are hiring female models from modeling agencies to populate their corporate parties because they don't have enough female employees, so they need to hire them. So I think 2018 will really be a year of getting to the root of the problem, which is not enough women in STEM careers, not enough female engineers, and this bro culture that's kind of pervasive across Silicon Valley and across tech in general. And Uber was kind of the poster child for that in 2017. But just like Harvey Weinstein was just the first in a list of people in Hollywood that have been taken down for their bad behavior, I think we're going to see more companies brought to responsibility in 2018.
Absolutely. Okay, let's focus on some positive news as well, because there was a lot the three of us talked about over the course of the year. Technological revolution happening right in our homes, the so-called smart home revolution, the smart home market. Quickly growing virtual assistants like Amazon's Alexa, Google's Assistant, Siri, of course, and the list goes on as the home becomes smartified, technologified. I'm not sure if that's even a word, but let's make it a word. Let me start with you on this one, Aaron. What do you make of it? And I guess we've been talking about this for years now, but are we really at that sort of tipping point, do you think?
Well, Todd, you're right. We've talked about a lot of things on this show in the past, like autonomous vehicles and flying drones that are going to drop me off a pizza to my balcony. And some of them are just distant future, right? Where they're not some things that we're going to actually see and touch and use. But the smart home actually did become a reality this year. We have devices like the Ecobee, a homegrown device, a Canadian company that's a smart thermostat and has Alexa, Amazon Alexa built into it now. We have smart light bulbs. We have Apple TV that allows me to use Siri to say what I want to have come up on my Netflix next. And most importantly and most notably, we have Amazon Alexa devices now available in Canada. So you have things like the Google Home and the Amazon Echo that are making our homes smarter, that are allowing us to get the news read to us in the morning and to turn lights on and off and to add items to our Amazon list when we run out of laundry detergent. So it really is the year where I don't think every Canadian's home is really smart right now, but a lot of people are going to be opening smart home devices under the tree this year. And I think by this time next year, a lot of our homes will be more smartified, Todd.
There we go, more smartified. You think about this too, you know, not just the thermostat, but the microwave and the fridge, and the list goes on and on. There are a lot of dumb devices, a lot of dumb furniture right now that could certainly use an upgrade.
Sure, and you know, a smart device is little more than a once dumb device that has computing power, sensors, and wireless capability built into it so it can communicate with the outside world. And as you start to replace that toaster, I'm in the market for one because mine's dying, and so if I can find a smart one for roughly around the same price, why wouldn't I? Because then I could control it from my smartphone or from my Google Home Mini. And the Google Home Mini and other speakers like it, like what Aaron was talking about, they really are kind of the harbingers of this. They use services that we've all been using all along. We've all been shopping on Amazon, on our smartphones and on our computers for years. We've been using Google services across all of our other devices as well. Now we're adding a voice layer, and we're making it realistic so that when we're in the house, we don't have to fetch a phone in order to change the lights. We just use our voice. So this year, it's almost like a puzzle where different pieces have come together, and finally the puzzle looks like it's not really complete yet, but we're getting there. And so as my smart toaster gets cheap enough so that it's viable for me to buy, and I can buy all these devices that plug into my speaker and my infrastructure, now it's a no-brainer because it doesn't cost me any more to be smart than it does to be dumb. And in 2017, we're going to look back at this year as the year where those pricing models started to click in and consumers started to pay attention and pull out their wallets.
Carmi Levy and Aaron Burry joining us here on our year in review of the world of tech, two of the best techies in our country. Thanks so much for this, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Todd. Happy New Year.